Welcome to the Life Self-Mastery Podcast, where we bring in entrepreneurs who have created online businesses and improved their lifestyles. Here's your host, Rohit Malhotra.
Hello everyone, I'm Rohit from lifeselfmastery.com, and today I'm excited to have Christopher Gimmer, who's the CEO of Snappa, a web-based graphic design tool for marketers and entrepreneurs. Snappa was launched and has seen more than 40,000 signups since they've gone through a combination of growth-focused tactics. Welcome to the show, Christopher.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about your background and how did you get into entrepreneurship and SaaS businesses?
Yeah, I'll try to make the long story short, but my background's actually in finance and accounting. So after I graduated university with a business degree, I started working for the federal government in kind of like a finance and budgeting role. And I did that for 5 years. And then eventually, like most people, I just got really bored with what I was doing. I had taken a trip to Southeast Asia, which was really amazing. And when I got back, I just didn't want to be in a cubicle anymore doing work that, I didn't really enjoy. And so fortunately at that time, Mark, who's now my business partner, he also started at the same place that I was in the government. And I found out that he kind of did web development on the side. He was never he never did it as a profession. It was just something that he kind of did on the side. And so when I saw that he could, develop stuff, that's when I started thinking maybe the two of us could start an online business together. And that led down quite a long journey to get us where we are. We launched quite a few projects. The first two weren't that successful. Eventually, we hit on one that, enabled us to make a bit of money. And then I kind of took, what I did was we both took 1 year leave of absence from work so that we can kind of focus a bit more on building the business. And eventually we were, able to make enough money where we felt somewhat confident enough to quit our jobs full time and kind of pursue the business thing full time.
Got it. And so you did you start in 2015 or did you start building on Snappa? And I think you had a product before Snappa as well, right?
Yeah. So the sequence of events was the first thing we ever launched was a student dating website called Classmate Catch. And that was back in 2012. We were actually able to get about 1,000 users or so in the first couple months. But if I'm being honest with myself, we didn't really know what we were doing. We had, wasn't making any revenue and we hadn't raised any money. So that, didn't last very long. And that's when we kind of realized if we're going to bootstrap a business, it has to make money from day one. And we kind of need paying customers. We can't build like a VC type business where you're only worried about getting users and then you'll figure out revenue down the road. So then in 2014, we launched a website called Bootstrap Bay, which was a marketplace for web design themes. Because we through doing keyword research, we noticed that Bootstrap themes and Bootstrap templates in particular, which was starting to become a popular front-end framework for developers. There was a lot of search volume around that. And so we basically created a marketplace for those themes. And that did about $10K per month in revenue after about 6 months. Now we had to pay about half of that to the theme authors. But we were, making a profit of, let's say, $4K per month, which for us was unbelievable. I mean, we went from, making no money online to making some. And after that, we, started learning more about how to drive traffic, how SEO works, different conversion type stuff. And then we, at that time, we started learning about SaaS and we, we really wanted to start getting into the SaaS business. And then we ended up launching Snappa in 2015. And so that's the business that we're working on now.
Got it. And did you get a lot of traffic from your previous product to Snappa, or how did you really try to get the initial users to start using Snappa product?
Yeah. So what happened was, so when we were working on Bootstrap Bay, I was basically creating all the blog content. We did a lot of content marketing. That's how we kind of grew that business. And every time we needed to create images, it was a big pain. And so that's kind of where I had the first kind of idea for, it'd be cool to build kind of like a graphic design tool kind of dedicated towards marketers and people like myself that don't really have design skills. But at that time, we knew that, launching a freemium product without any user base would have been really difficult. So fortunately, what happened around the same time was I was on Reddit, and someone had posted a thread about where to find really nice free stock photos. And this is when like Pexels and Unsplash and some of these really good free stock photo sites were popping up. And it did really well. And so I essentially turned that into a blog post where I curated the really good new free stock photo sites under Creative Commons and turned it into like a big blog post. And that blog post ended up going viral. And so all of a sudden we have this blog post that's ranking on the first page of Google for free stock photos, which is like an insanely competitive keyword. So yeah. After a couple months, I figured like, okay, it's going to die down, and but it maintained kind of that first page ranking. So then when we were looking at the websites that he had listed, none of them had search functionality at the time. So essentially what they were doing is like every week they would release 10 new free stock photos, and you can kind of download them and do whatever you wanted with them. So what we did was we basically created our own stock photo site called StockSnap, and we had curated these photos that were under Creative Commons that essentially had no copyrights, and then we made them searchable. And so we launched that website, and obviously we included it within our blog post, and then we started getting traffic to that stock photo site as well. So now we were in this really great position where we had a blog post that was generating a lot of traffic for free stock photos. And then we also had a free stock photo site that was generating a lot of traffic. So what I did was I basically ran a survey to the people that were coming to our stock photo site to see like who they were, what they were using the photos for. And sure enough, a lot of them were marketers and social media people that were, using them for social media, content marketing, that kind of stuff. And then I did another kind of round of interviews where I tried to dig into, how they were actually creating their graphics, what kind of tools they were using, just to validate that, creating a graphic design tool like Snappa would be a useful tool for them. And then once, I kind of got some validation in that area, we finally then launched Snappa, and it was, pretty easy to get our first customers because we just had to cross promote it to our initial audiences. So, without that blog post and without our free stock photo site, it would have been much, much harder to get Snappa off the ground.
Got it. Yeah, it's interesting that you've been building stuff from 2012, and over the years it took you a while to come on to the real product. But how much time did it actually take you to scale up Snappa and make it a profitable venture? And are you guys full time into Snappa, or are you also working on StockSnap?
So we actually ended up selling StockSnap about a year ago. So StockSnap was super valuable for us in the beginning, and it was probably like 80 to 90% of our signups in the early days. But as we scaled Snappa and kind of figured out, these other, growth methods or whatever, by the time we sold it, it obviously became a much less percentage of our signups. And so when we got the offer to acquire it, it definitely made sense for us, because then we could, just focus 100% on Snappa rather than kind of diverting our efforts between two different things. And obviously it gave us, a nice chunk of cash in the bank, as a either safety net or something that we could reinvest back into the business. But so to answer the other question about how much time did it take and whatnot, I think it took about, sorry, it's been a while now. I think it took about it didn't take that long for it to basically give myself and Mark a salary that we could live off of. I think we were doing 10K MRR within, I think it was 6 to 8 months or something like that. And then basically as soon as we were able to hire our first developer, we did that because as you can imagine with SaaS, there's always a huge backlog of feature requests. And then our next hire after that was, kind of a full-time marketer and support person. And so, so we've been able to scale it, and it's been profitable pretty early. It's, obviously a profitable business today, and we continue to grow it.
Got it. And I was researching about Snappa, and I came across an article about you ended up purchasing Snappa.com for $40,000. So it was very interesting because you have Noah Kagan who bought Somo.com, and there's another Indian website I know who bought Housing.com for millions of dollars. So why did you go about spending $40,000, and do you advise founders to buy the .com domain name, and was it a successful purchase?
Yeah. So when we started Snappa, our domain was snappa.io, and obviously there's absolutely no way we would have spent $40,000 in the beginning to acquire the .com. So we were basically in a situation where, Snappa was growing. We knew that it was going to be a business that was going to be around long term, whether we just continued to grow it indefinitely or if it was, something that we would sell at a certain point in time. And so you kind of get to that point where, at the end, it's part of it is branding and kind of that trust factor. And the other part that always bothered me is if you went to snappa.com, it wasn't like another website or something like that. It would just go to a blank page. We actually had one or two people that would send in support requests being like, hey, your website's not working. I went to snappa.com and it's just like a blank page. Now, I'm sure that most people nowadays are just putting things into Google or bookmarking stuff, but you always wonder how often that's happening. But at the end of the day, I looked at it as this is a company that's growing. We want it to be around for a long time, and having the .com is just for a branding and a trust factor. To me, it made sense to acquire it, given, $40,000 is definitely a lot of money. But at the same time, when you're doing, I think at that time we were doing around, 20 or 30K in MRR. So you can sort of justify it if you're looking at it as an investment. Now, would I advise people to spend a bunch of money on .coms? Generally, my answer would be no, especially if you're launching a new product and you have no idea whether it's even going to work or not. I mean, I personally wouldn't spend a lot of money on a .com. Now, having said that, if I had a bunch of money in my bank account and we were working on a new idea and I can get the .com for, let's say, $5,000, maybe I might do that because if your business starts taking off, that seller might up the price down the road. That's kind of my thoughts on that.
Got it. Yeah, totally does make sense. For somebody just starting out, they don't need to really worry about a .com, but once you're building a long-term brand, totally somebody should look at the long-term effects. I want to know what are the pricing for Snappa.com and and any other numbers you would like to share with the listeners.
Yeah, so Snappa is a freemium model. So we have a free plan that you can create 5 graphics a month. So if you're just looking to try it out, or you only need to create like a couple graphics here and there, then you can get by on our free plan. And then we also have a pro plan, which starts at $10 a month on an annual subscription, or $15 month to month. And then we have a team plan. So for up to 5 team members, and that one's $20 a month on an annual subscription, or $30 month a month.
Got it. And what I notice is, Canva also has a similar product, but are there any differentiations? Are they catering to a very specific audience of designers, or do you think you're reaching out to the same audience?
Yeah, every product in every industry, always has multiple products. And my thing is, you can never satisfy every single user. So speaking for Snappa, we really focus heavily on ease of use and efficiency. And we really target those, the marketer / small business owner who's really looking to create graphics quickly, but still nice looking graphics, and then kind of get on with their day. So we're not trying to make designers out of people. We're really focusing on people that need graphics for their business, but it's not their main focus, and that's really how we've tailored our product.
Got it. So, Christopher, I want to know what are some of the biggest challenges in growing a startup, SaaS startup, especially where which has a freemium model, and plans range from $10 to $20. So how does the funnel work? And what are the biggest challenges in growing such a bootstrap startup?
Yeah, it's funny because usually when you're starting a software business or bootstrapping a software business, usually what you don't want to do is start something that's freemium with a low price point. And the reason is you just need so many customers to make it viable. Yeah. But going back to what I mentioned earlier in the interview is that, we had that blog post and that stock photo site that was already getting quite a significant amount of traffic, which made it viable. If you're really starting from scratch with zero audience and you have no way of getting customers in the door other than kind of reaching out directly, it's going to be it could be pretty difficult to do a freemium low price point business unless you have some type of viral component to it. Unfortunately, we didn't have that. In terms of the challenges, with bootstrapping a software startup, you're always going to be kind of behind in terms of where you want to be in development. So for the first year, it was like just my co-founder that was working on the product. And so you can imagine there's quite a backlog of feature requests and bug fixes and all that kind of stuff. And you can't hire, if you don't have a chunk of money in the bank from VCs, you can't go out and hire a team of developers and not worry about being profitable. So, we could only hire when we actually had the money to do so. So that's always going to be a challenge. I don't know a single other software founder that thinks that they have enough developers for what they need. So you kind of just have to understand that that's a reality, and you'll just have to kind of work around that.
Got it. And do you in terms of marketing, do you pay for paid advertising, or is it a viral or referral marketing? How do you make sure that you get the stream of new users and customers coming on and using Snappa?
Yeah, so we don't do any paid advertising. Paid ads is really difficult to make work unless you have a higher ticket software with a high lifetime value. So our bread and butter has basically been SEO and content marketing. So we've been very strategic about setting up various landing pages, targeting certain keywords, as well as writing content that is highly relevant to our product. So we generate a lot of traffic through Google, which we then promote our product, obviously. And then because we have a freemium model, we tend to see a lot of referrals from people that try the product. They like it. They tell you their friends about it. We don't have any sort of like true viral component to it. Like, there's no widget, or there's no, email signature or anything like that. It's really more of just people telling their friends. And then we also tend to get written up quite a bit in blog posts, and every day there's a new article about 21 marketing tools that every business owner must have. And so we find our way in those quite a bit. So that's kind of the main marketing engine right now is the SEO, the content, the referrals. And we've been working a little bit more with partnerships, and that's definitely something that we're looking to do more of over the next year or so.
Got it. So Christopher, you have background in finance, and then you transitioned later into startups. So do you think non-technical founders can build SaaS products, or is it too complex and you need to have a technical co-founder?
This is my opinion, but I think it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to do a SaaS business without a technical co-founder and keeping the technology in-house. I think if you need a website built, or the technology itself is not a core component of the business, then I think it's perfectly fine to outsource development or maybe hire an agency to build it. But I mean, there's very, very, very few SaaS products that are successful that didn't have that weren't built by or weren't built in-house by one of the technical co-founders. So I was fortunate in that I did have a technical co-founder. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, but you're probably going to need a lot of money to make it happen. And if you're non-technical, at the bare minimum, you will need to have at least a solid understanding of programming so that you can actually manage those developers and keep them accountable and make sure that they're building the right stuff.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Actually, sorry, one more point on that. I mean, in the early days of Snappa, I mean, Mark, my co-founder, was working, just crazy hours. And it wasn't being compensated because, we had equity in the business, we're 50-50 partners. So, he was willing to put in the, 13, 14 hour days for God knows how many weeks and months in a row, because he knew that in the end, he was going to be rewarded for that. Right. Whereas if you're hiring, an agency, or you're just paying a developer by the hour, they're not going to put in like 20-hour days and only get paid 8 hours of work. They're just not going to do that for you. So that's the other aspect of, in the early days when you have equity, you can kind of justify working insanely hard. Whereas if you're paying someone by the hour, there's not as much incentive to really go balls out.
No, you're absolutely right. I think I watched a video from Gary Vaynerchuk where he said that employees will never be that driven to work hard on the business because they're not compensated well, or maybe it's not their baby. So I get where you're coming from.
And that's why when startups get funding, they almost always give equity to the early employees, because if you're employee number 1 and 2 of a funded startup, you're probably going to be expected to work insane hours, but they kind of dangle that equity in front of you, and there's always that promise of you making a gazillion dollars when there's the big exit. But for a bootstrap company, you can't make that promise, right?
Correct. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And so I want to talk about your team. Are you guys remote, or you work out of a certain place?
Yeah, we work remotely. So we all work from either. I personally work from a home office. Our marketing guy, he kind of likes to switch up his environment more frequently than some of the rest of us. But so we all work remotely. However, so a lot of us are in the same city. So we try to meet up pretty regularly. And then we also do like a company retreat once a year. It's kind of, like a team building and fun kind of activity.
Got it. And looks like, Canada and Ottawa has a lot of these SaaS companies. So, does it help to have developers from these areas joining your company?
Yeah, I mean, Canada is interesting because there's quite a bit of developers and developer talent, but it's nothing like San Francisco where, the top developers are making, 6 figures or multiple 6-figure salaries that we kind of need to compete with. Right. So it's actually a pretty good, Canada is a pretty good country to, well, at least in the big cities like Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, right, and maybe you can lump Ottawa in there. Whereas, you can find developer talent, and they're going to demand much less than a top talent from Silicon Valley.
Got it. And how big is the team right now?
So right now it's 5 people.
Oh, okay. Got it. So let's quickly do the top 3. What's your favorite business book?
I think it's still, well, I'll give you 2. I'll cheat the question a bit. So my favorite overall book is, I think it's still the Steve Jobs biography by, I think it's Walter Isaacs. Yes. It's just absolutely fascinating and probably the most inspirational read. And that really kind of opened my eyes to the possibilities that entrepreneurship can afford. And then in terms of like a pure technical book, I think Traction by Gabriel Weinberg and Justin Mares is a really solid book to think about growth and marketing and kind of the different tactics that are available to you.
Got it. And if you could go back in time when you got into entrepreneurship or started Snappa, what is the one thing you would have focused on?
The one thing we were focused on?
No, if you could go back in time, is there anything you would have done differently, or you would have focused on one single thing to really keep things moving on?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's difficult because especially for software, there's part of you that you need to launch early, and you don't want to take too long to develop, because you need to, validate as early as possible. You need to actually generate revenue and support yourself. But at the same time, if you kind of rush things and move too quickly and not factor in some of the decisions in the long term, you end up building up a lot of technical debt, and you kind of have to go back and refactor some of the stuff. And so I don't want people to look into this too much, but there were certain things where maybe we should have taken a bit more time to decide on, because down the road it kind of ended up hurting us a little bit. So just being careful about the decisions that you make early on and how they're going to affect you down the road.
Okay. And what's your favorite online tool, for example, Gmail or Slack or any other tool that you use frequently?
Yeah, in terms of, Slack's an awesome tool. We use it every day. And for marketing purposes, I really like Ahrefs. It's really good for keyword research, backlink research, and essentially all the SEO stuff that you need.
Got it. And how can people get to know more about Snappa?
They can go to snappa.com. That $40,000 investment paying off right there.
Got it. And what is the best way people can reach out to you?
I'm on Twitter, although I'm really not that active anymore, at @cgimmer. If anyone wants to reach out directly, they can email me, Christopher@snappa.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris, for coming on to the show. I really appreciate it, and nice talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Life Self-Mastery podcast, where we teach you how to start and grow your online business. For more information, visit Rohit's blog at www.lifeselfmastery.com.